The Huntington Beach Mortuary was, to put it lightly, a gloomy place. Not because of ghosts or ghouls, but because of the sheer volume of human sadness that had seeped into its walls. Day in, day out, grieving families passed through its doors, leaving behind a residue of tears and heartache. Still, it was a place of respect, of dignity in the face of death. Or at least it was, until the poop started flying. Now, Huntington Beach with its sunny skies and perfect waves, wasn't exactly known for its thriving homeless community. Yet, there they were, a ragtag group of individuals camped out across the street from the mortuary. The reason for their presence remains a mystery to this day, but their choice of weaponry, sadly, does not. It began on a Tuesday, a day like any other, the air thick with the scent of lilies and regret. The funeral director, a portly man named Barry, was just finishing up a eulogy for Mrs. Gladys Hemington, a woman who, according to Barry, had been taken too soon, despite dying peacefully in her sleep at the ripe old age of 92. As Barry reached the part about Mrs. Hemington's legendary pecan pie, a brown, foul-smelling projectile came hurtling through the open window, landing with a splat on the pristine white casket. Chaos erupted. Mourners screamed, children cried, and Barry, poor pie-loving Barry, just stood there speechless, covered in what could only be described as the remnants of a very bad burrito. The assault continued. More projectiles, each one more pungent than the last, rained down upon the mortuary, turning the solemn gathering into a scene from a particularly disgusting food fight. Frantic calls were made, the police were summoned, but the damage, both literal and figurative, had been done. The sanctity of the mortuary, a place where people came to say goodbye, had been violated in the most unpleasant way imaginable. As the last of the mourners, handkerchiefs pressed to their noses, fled the building, Barry could only stare in despair at the carnage. The smell, oh God, the smell. It was as if 1,000 portable toilets had simultaneously decided to erupt within the confines of his beloved mortuary, and that's when he saw him. He rose from behind a row of caskets, his movement slow, deliberate, almost dignified. His skin was a sickly green, his clothes tattered and stained, and his eyes, well, let's just say they wouldn't have looked out of place on a dead fish. He was, for lack of a better word, a zombie. Not the flesh-eating, brain-craving kind you see in movies, mind you. This one seemed more confused than hungry. He lumbered towards the window, sniffing the air with a look of utter disgust on his decaying face. It was as if someone had just served him a glass of warm milk after he'd specifically asked for a beer. And then he did something unexpected. He picked up a nearby plunger, the kind used for, well, you know, and brandished it towards the group of assailants still lobbing their fecal grenades from across the street. A guttural roar erupted from his throat, a sound that sent chills down Barry's spine. It wasn't a roar of aggression, no, it was something else entirely. It was the roar of someone who had just witnessed a grave injustice. It was the roar of a man, or at least a former man, who would not stand idly by while innocent people were subjected to such a heinous act. The effect was instantaneous. The homeless assailants, their faces a mixture of shock and awe, slowly backed away, their ammunition forgotten. The zombie, his work done, dropped the plunger with a thud and shuffled back towards the shadows, disappearing as quickly as he came. The police arrived shortly after, sirens wailing, only to find a bewildered Barry, surrounded by the remnants of the attack, and the faint, lingering odor of what can only be described as victory. The event became a local legend, a tale whispered in hushed tones over pints of beer and plates of fish tacos. The Huntington Beach Mortuary, once a place of quiet mourning, was now known as the place where a zombie, armed with nothing but a plunger and a righteous fury, saved the day from a truly crappy situation.